In other words, what would that look like on the plat? Because right now, you're not seeing those variances on this plat. You're not seeing what it would look like, with the lot sizes, where the utilities are gonna go. So in addition to getting a better picture, there's also some things that are still missing that were recommended by our, city engineer, as well as things that, our ordinance requires. You know, we wanna see the stormwater management plan. How is that gonna impact drainage? Is it gonna require a retention or detention pond? How's it gonna impact the neighbors, our streets? So there were some things there. And finally, we will be bringing to you all, to the council, consideration for the new subdivision ordinance, which may be beneficial in terms of what's in that new subdivision. One of the sections is lot sizes. We're actually asking for smaller setbacks and smaller lot sizes. So that may be beneficial to housing developers. They can get more lots on their property. But basically, we wanted to have the engineers, which they agreed, come back and present a preliminary plat that shows what it would look like with those variances that they're requesting.
Mayor, I'd like to change my motion to table.
Okay, one moment, Mayor Pro Tem. Ms. Morales did ask to be heard, so I'm gonna allow her to, next statement. Ms. Morales, would you like to address the council?
Just on the, right now on the variance of the sidewalk, we already had the last, development that was done by the Martinez's, and we looked at it last night with no sidewalks and no alleys. So we're asking for that to be approved. And, everything else, we're going to, bring the drawings and bring in everything. So that's what we're asking for at this time, just those two things.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Morales.
Mayor, can I mention one thing?
Yes, sir.
As opposed to a motion to table, I would prefer a motion to disapprove. Then, Ms. Morales will be, she'll let them know what the conditions are, but I don't wanna have any clock issues with a table versus disapproval.
Disapproval.
Disapproval just means not approval today, but she'll let them know what the conditions are to bring it back.
Okay, so we have, Mayor Pro Tem first, Councilwoman Aguilar the second.
But before we move on, I have a question, Ms. Moran, because we've been hearing a lot from people. Instead of this back and forth, why would the zoning, where we take it to zoning without, to me, we're wasting these citizen time. Why not take everything to zoning and then bring it once it's completed? So at this time, we have it on the agenda, and
But I see your point, but I'm not saying you're right in what you're saying, I'm saying you're right, we've heard that too. What happens is, again, while we mentioned the clock, he's saying that we have to expedite this to get this through the proper channels according to what, not only what's in our ordinance, but also what's in the state statute. So we have to get it to P and Z, we have to come back to the council, so we can give the applicant a response as to, hey, this is what you need to do to correct or modify your plat, and then that will put the onus on them to do whatever they need to do to get it to where it's a plat that you're willing to accept and approve.
Okay, but going back to what Ms. Ornella said, that what she wants to do, can we do that? Because I mean, if it's already done, and then come back with the other, so we stop delaying our
We're not
people that are
doing
trying
nothing.
to build
They're
some
gonna
stuff?
bring another ordinance where it's gonna set setbacks to where it's gonna convenience them in the long run.
What the current ordinance reads, just to make sure.
Please, can I-
I'll answer.
Yeah.
What the current ordinance reads, everything they're asking for a variance is something that the current ordinance requires. So meaning, that the ordinance requires sidewalks, it requires certain dimensions of your streets, it requires alleys. Now, do I agree with everything that's in the ordinance? No. These ordinances were drafted, as I mentioned last night, back in the 1970s. So if you think about it, the logic historically has been, I think I mentioned it yesterday, is we use our alleys primarily, remember, for trash pickup. Trash pickup, that doesn't exist anymore. But we also use alleys, and part of the reason we can't get alleys now is because we have utilities in alleys. So we still have to keep an easement to the alleys, so it doesn't allow for people to utilize the alleys. Now, some people take it on their own and utilize alleys, but they shouldn't be doing it. But in saying that those are things that historically have changed. Now what you'll find is, of course, you have the trash pickup in the front, right? Now you have, and now we're looking, okay, can we put the utilities in the streets? But with that, you put utilities in the streets, well then how much wider do you need for the road to be able to service those utilities? So those are the things that we have to take into consideration. I know it sounds a bit simple. The other thing, again, we can argue or discuss aesthetics, sidewalks. Do you as a community wanna see sidewalks? Do you not wanna see it? Doesn't matter. Lighting. Do you wanna see the things that we can't, again, historically, we may have done it, but we shouldn't, is just basic services, water, sewer, fire protection, hydrants, are they there? Do we have fire protection? If there's no fire protection, then my recommendation would be not to approve it. Not to approve those types of developments, because that's not something that's conducive to, can fire trucks get in and out of those properties? Those are the things that, again, basic things that we need to make sure that we do not approve. That's what I would say.
Okay, council, do you have any other questions? You heard the city attorney's recommendation, so Mayor Pro Tem and Councilwoman Agar, did you concur with his movement?
I concur.
There's a motion and a second to move forward with council's recommendations. Are there any other questions? With that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? All in favor of council's recommendation?
Can I have everybody raise their hand in favor, please? Just Mayor Pro Tem and Garza.
Okay.
Those,
Those opposed? Okay, everybody's got to vote. Raise your hand, please, if you're opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, everybody, Councilwoman, Garza, did you raise your hand? Oh, I forget, okay, all right, so,
So it's 5, 4, and.
yeah, it failed to, the vote.
It failed to dismiss, so they can bring it back with what was needed.
It just means you've got the clock running, and Ms. Myers just have to keep track of the clock in terms of getting you to act on it.
Making it more difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because now let's say here, everything
do we wanna let them know the time?
By going back and
Or
forth.
do you wanna let them know the time?
But they keep on bringing it back and forth.
This
I
is
just
law
wanna
change.
say that,
It used to be 30 days.
I believe we may be having another meeting this month, and I've gotten with Ms. Ornelas and the engineers to try to work and bring that, because I know we rushed through this, but I could have pointed out what things look like now, there's, what they're proposing, we couldn't even get vehicles in there to service our, and that was why we wanted to give you all a better picture of what the plat looks like, so you can have more of an informed decision on approving it.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask the city attorney to instruct council on what just happened.
Sure, the clock used to be 30 days, it was changed in the legislature, I'll double check, but the clock was not, the time period was not shortened, but what the clock means is when you have a plat that's filed for consideration by the council, if you fail to act on it, or disapprove it, that is, if you fail to approve or disapprove, then it's going to be approved if your clock runs, if your limit runs. And if it gets approved, you're gonna be required to allow that subdivision to get constructed. So if you've got a constructed subdivision that is filed with substandard lots, or variances that have been requested, not granted, basically you're stuck with that. And whatever happens out there is your responsibility. So that's why typically, if you disapprove, it means fix what we don't like, bring it back, consistent with your codes and your ordinances, because if you get stuck with it, they get to build based on what was submitted. And whatever gets submitted, you're stuck with it.
She's already explained, she knew what she had to do.
But he just said the clock, this has nothing to do with time.
Oh, yes. Once they file it, the clock starts running.
Of how many days?
That used to be 30, I have to double check. But you either-
30 checks.
You either approve or disapprove. When you disapprove, you're required to disapprove with conditions. Ms. Moran knows what the conditions are, so she has an obligation, if you disapprove with conditions, to notify the applicant what those conditions are that need to be fixed. But then the clock resets in order to meet those conditions. If you don't, if you let the clock run, whatever anybody submits to you gets approved. And they get to build, if they want to, give you an example, they want to come in with lots that
Show
are,
the plat.
yeah, that are half or 2/3 of the size that your code says need to be constructed.
No.
Okay, council, I'm gonna ask council to rest while the city attorney is talking that, just so, if we have questions, everybody gets a chance to ask one at a time.
Blow that up. So, see here, they're proposing, 10-foot alleyways for our utilities. We couldn't get a vehicle in there. They're proposing a street for 30-foot right-of-way. You know, we're asking them to put the utilities on front, and then you have these two, this proposed street. So what, city attorney is saying is if we don't, either approve or disapprove, it's gonna allow for them to move forward with what they're proposing here.
Okay, so can we
Council.
vote then, now that y'all
Yeah,
explained yourselves?
council, I think there was
We
a,
tried.
I think there was a misunderstanding of what was on the floor. So with that, I'm gonna ask council to make a motion and a second to rescind what we just did. So, may I have a motion?
It would be to take up and reconsider
Yes,
this agenda item.
okay.
Hold on, Ms. Ornelas, you wanted to say something.
Yes, what I wanted to say is that we're going to do some changes to that, but what we're asking for are just the two things right now. The variance for the sidewalks, okay, and the alley, that's it. We're going to, take their recommendations that were given to us yesterday, coming back, then bringing it all to you all, for the final, but on that way, you would see that the final doesn't have the sidewalks, which, those are the only two things that we're asking for right now on that plat that we're gonna redo for her specifications or his specifications, and then bring it so that then you all can approve it all, but, we're asking to leave those two things out. Everything else we're gonna be in compliance with,
Mayor, can we make a motion?
including a retention pond and everything else, yes.
Okay, council, the city manager has the floor.
Just really quick on that, again, we're asking for disapproval of this, as to her point. What they're gonna bring back is what, again, right now, you don't have it on paper. What she's proposing is not on this paper. So we're asking for disapproval, and once she brings it in the format that she's asking for, then it'll be up to the council to approve it at that time.
Okay, I think, and Bobby, please instruct us on what we need to correctly move through this.
Motion to.
Okay, hold on, allow it.
What was the motion, there was a motion, did it pass or?
It failed.
It failed? Okay, then if it failed, then you can just entertain another motion.
Okay, so that motion is clear. Council, regarding item number 8D, consider the request as per the assistant city managers for the recommendation of the planning and zoning to, the right word is
Disapprove with
To dis-
conditions.
disapprove with conditions. So may I have a motion? Any second? I have a motion by Councilwoman Hernandez, a second by Councilwoman Talamantes. Is there any questions? Hearing none, call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. All right, moving on to item 8E. Discuss and consider an act of ordinance number 2024-105, approving a land use variance, a special exception for Severia Gonzalez and Nayla Lieja at 1408 Pecan Street to allow for a variance to a minimum setback requiring the following accessory structures, a carport and a storage building. The property is described as such and such, found in further description there. This is an action item. I will ask for a motion and a second. Motion by Councilwoman Algarza, second by Councilwoman Hernandez. Assistant City Manager, you have the floor.
Mayor, council members, you have before you an agenda item to consider a variance with respect to the current zoning ordinance that we have under section 4884. Mr., if we can go to the site plan, the applicant has a carport and a shed which are considered accessory uses. And under section 4884, accessory uses are not part of the house or attached to the house or are an integral part of the house requires setback requirements. And those setbacks is that the storage shed needed to be 10 feet away from the house. The same thing with this garage, carport. It's not part of the house, it's not attached, it's just next to it. And that needed to be 10 feet away. And the setback requirements, of course, is for the public health and safety, fire issues. Should something happen, it's not right next to the house. Should the shed catch fire, it's not right next to the house. So we have those setback requirements. What happened here is the applicant built, we can look at the carport picture, Ms. Garcia. Built the carport right there next to the barn dominium that they built. They built this barn dominium back in 2022. It was built, I think, after the fact, then they came and pulled the permit. The same thing with the carport. They built the carport without the permit, and then they also relocated the shed without a relocation permit, which is required as well. Mr. Gonzalez wants to be in compliance and has since come in and pulled the required permits, and we have met with him on several occasions to try to work through this, and Planning and Zoning recommended that he make some adjustments to make the carport a part of the barn dominium, which would then make it an integral part and it would be attached. He has agreed to that. He has also agreed to move the storage shed 10 feet back, so staff is recommending.
Motion.
Okay, those recommendations, we've already got a motion and a second. Is there any other questions?
So everything's gonna be in compliance then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Now we'll go on to item 8A. Discuss and consider resolution number 2024-1002 for the city council of the city of Pearsall, ordering a special election, establishing procedures for said election to be held on Saturday, the 3rd of May, 2025. The special election shall be for the purposes of submitting to the qualified voters of the city, one proposition to approve or reject, giving authority, authorization to the city council of the city of Pearsall, Texas, to sell the natural gas utility distribution system owned by the city, providing other matters related to the special election, and finally determining that the meeting at which this resolution is passed is open to the public as required by law. This is the next item.
Motion.
That's for a motion and a second. I got a motion by Councilwoman Garza. I got a second by Councilwoman Lee Garza. City Manager, you have the floor.
Mayor and council, back in September, we discussed this item. Believe most of the council was here, to go over the presentation. The presentation that you had, that I went over was right here. It's actually, it's right there in front of you. I did add a couple of things. There was one sheet, I believe, that was added, but I just want to go over, reiterate a couple of things. On page 3 of the packet, if you go to page 3, I'm not gonna go over the entire thing, okay? Page 3 of the packet, that's number, can you go one page, Kristen? Part of what I wasn't clear, right now, what we have is about the 19.96. That is part of our system that we probably don't need to replace, because it needs compliance. Now, I'm not saying it's all 100%, I'm just saying that it's not. The rest of the pipe, what I've learned, is need. So you're talking about 26 miles of pipe that we need replacing. The 19, it's about 25, a little over 25, about 26 miles of pipe that we need, of the 45 miles of pipe that we have that we need replacing. The other thing, as I pointed out last time, the customer count, back in 2007 and 8, we used to have 1,426 customers. As of, we actually had 1,554 or 44 customers. As of 23-24, we have a total of 776 customers, so that's about half of what the customer count was from 2007, 2008 to 23-24. So we're losing, and so what we try to emphasize there is we are losing customers. We have been losing customers for years now. Our purchases of gas, I'm not gonna go into that. The other part, and we still have to do some additional work on this, I'll speak to some of the issues that we're dealing with, is, of course, the revenues to expenses. From our standpoint, the revenues to expenses, I believe, are on page, that's the last page. If you look at the very last page, council, I believe that's just what was added. So revenues to expenses on natural gas, this is kind of where we are, we're happy in the